सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Any questions? Okay. What it means is that it is called Savikalpa Samadhi. So you haven't yet reached realization, but you have reached that state of last thought. So in meditation, you repeat a mantra. The mind repeats a mantra, so that you're left with one thought. And the intellect discriminates between sound and silence. Means you're not chanting aloud, but in your mind you're chanting the thought. So between the thought and the silence between the two thoughts, the intellect is discriminating. So that you're almost there. You're just one thought away from. So it's infinite bliss. But he says grasped by the intellect. So it's not quite total realization. It's one step below realization. Established in it, one does not move away from reality. So once you get to that state, you can't fall back into delusion. But there is still you and God. There is that duality. So it's called Savikalpa Samadhi. So Swami Ramatirtha says that many people have reached that state and fallen short. They haven't gone. Even there, it takes an effort to get there. So you have to keep meditating for some time. Then what happens is, when you're deep in meditation, you stop the chant. When you stop the chant, the last thought goes. So can you imagine your mind now, which is full of millions of thoughts and desires, has reached a state where there is only one thought. And when you stop the chant, even that one thought goes. So the mind, the construct of the mind is thought. The mind is made of thoughts. So without thoughts, mind is gone. Mind is extinct. Intellect, which so far was discriminating between thought and silence, now gets transfixed in that silence. It's a new experience for the intellect. It's never known this. So intellect is jobless, so that intellect also goes. When mind and intellect go, what remains? What remains? Atma. So the individual merges with the totality. So he's just one thought away. Then in 22, he talks about that realization. 22 onwards, he talks about it. Any other question? So what you must visualize is that how handicapped we are because of these millions of thoughts in our mind. And it forms like a cobweb through which you can't penetrate. There are experiences where the air is so dense, fog, that light doesn't penetrate. So it's dark, you can't see anything. Our mind is like that now. Confused, deluded, you don't know which way you're going, and when you can't see, how will you move? There is no movement. Where it's crystal clear. Like when you go to a mountain, there's no pollution. For miles you can see, it seems as if it's so close. Have you experienced that? So That is the transition of the mind. And we must aspire for it, because then everything is clear. There is no confusion in your mind, there is no delusion. You know exactly what you need to do. Do it, you get there. Okay? So, even though technically there is a difference between Savikalpa Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi, as far as we are concerned, he is realized. So, we move to verse 22.
यं लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते.
Having attained which, one does not consider any achievement higher than that. And established in it, one is not moved even by great sorrow. Guruna pi vichalyate. So, he is now communicating that state with reference to what we know. So, he is putting it in a negative. Having attained which, one does not consider any achievement higher than that. Higher than Atman, there is nothing. So, you've reached the highest. And established in it, one is not moved even by great sorrow. So, you have to come back to our level and see what gives us sorrow. You have to take it step by step. Like suppose you lose a pencil, you've come here and you're writing notes with a pencil. And you leave that pencil behind. When you go home, you realize, oh, I've left a pencil behind. Will you come back here and get the hall opened and all that? You will say, Jane do, pencil has gone, buy another one. Like that you keep going. But if there is an expensive pen that means something to you, that someone you love has given you that pen, and you left that pen behind, maybe you will come back tomorrow to retrieve it. So you feel a little pinch. Then you lose your phone. That gives you, I can't imagine, because everything is on that phone. It gives you inconvenience more than sorrow. At some stage, and then material things you go, and then it comes to emotional. You lose, I remember many years back, there was a gentleman, Nepean Sea Road, I think. His entire family perished in a car accident on the way back from Pune. I mean, how would you feel if your entire family got wiped out? Wife, children, mother, the whole lot. So like that. At some stage you will say, I'll be finished. So that is your level. Now here he is saying, once you reach there, you will not be moved even by great sorrow. Why? Yes, but with reference to this question, what is the answer? Why is it that even the greatest sorrow in the world does not affect?
Because they are not attached to anything anymore, not even happiness or sugar.
So the desires are
materialistic, even from materialistic person you are not so you are just for the material.
Long before that, people have moved from materialism.
In the sense that illusion.
There are two things here. One is, when you reach the state of infinite, he's spoken of it in the previous verse, infinite bliss, okay? Mathematically, anyone studied mathematics here? Infinity. Once you reach infinity, infinite plus a million is infinite. Infinite minus million?
It's also infinite.
Infinite plus infinite? Infinite minus infinite? People who haven't studied math will say 0. You never, once you reach infinity, nothing will touch it. That's what he said. And the second thing is what he said. It's like you dream, okay? You dream that you have suddenly, now with all this war and all that going on, there's lots of discussions. So you say, suddenly you earn $1 billion. Huh? And you're so excited. Where is this happening? In the dream. You're so excited that what happens? You wake up. Okay? Now, having woken up, will you say, Arre yaar, at least I should have collected the $1 billion, then woken up? Would you say that? No. Because instantly you realize that the $1 billion in the dream, what value does it have in the waking? 0. Same thing with the loss. You've been wiped out completely. The stock market crashed and you're worth 0. And then you wake up because of the shock. Does that affect your assets in the waking state? No. So you just move on. You don't even look back at the dream. That is the state that he is referring to. Okay? So, why will you not be affected by great sorrow? Now you come back to our level. When you move from, let's say, physical to emotional, you are not moved by, or let's say from childhood to teenage. Once you become a teenager, you're not affected by toys. Huh? You're not affected whether you win a game of Monopoly or lose. Chess, you might still get affected. I have known full-grown adults who fight playing chess. But Monopoly, you don't. Why? Because to you now, even as a teenager, it's 0 value. So there has to be that upward growth. And then you're not affected. But because you're not affected, you get. Because you have clarity of thinking. You are objective. You're creative. Because your mind is clear, peaceful, calm, not agitated. So you have no desire with reference to that which is lower than you. Above you, you have. Right? So there must be this assessment of where you are. All of us must assess. So this is my level, more or less you get. When you know what affects you. Now we are at a state where we start crying at the drop of a hat. Then you know I am infantile. I am at a pretty bad state. Because if you give in to tears at the slightest thing, then your, what do you call that? Capacity, your, it's like this, I don't know what it's called. Yeah, your threshold, but it's something else. Like say, suppose you were to have gone to Mr. Ratan Tata when he was alive with a foolproof business plan. You will get only profit. Huh? But how much will you earn? Guaranteed 15,000 rupees a month. You think Ratan Tata would be interested? You have to add quite a few zeros to get him interested. So that's the thing. We are at such a low level that the slightest thing affects us. Your capacity to bear with changes, to bear with loss is so low that you see what happens is, as a result, you are suffering. Most of your life you are suffering. Good things also happen to you, but you are so affected by what's happened that you can't enjoy the good things. You lose a family member, there must be some staying power. I don't know what that word is, I'm not able to get it. The ability to withstand. Huh? What?
Resilience.
Yeah. No, I'm not able to get it. With reference to money, you have reserves. You have reserves that are so huge. A little loss here and there, it just gets rounded off. You don't get affected. But if it's a chai wala or a taxi driver, he gets affected. Right? Because they live day to day. Today, if they don't earn, they don't eat. It's that. Spiritually, we are like that. And there must, if you get affected by these things, you must tell yourself, I'm in a pretty bad shape. I must improve. I'm at that chai wala level. That is the thing he's talking about. So here is a person who's gone almost to infinity. Nothing affects him. So you must visualize that state. See, when we feel happy, so tremendous happy experience has come your way. You're excited. You're happy. How long? Few minutes, few days. Then again, you go down. So this is our life. But here is a person who is at that level of infinite bliss all the time. Not affected. Not moved by even great sorrow. See, in tamas, you don't feel. That's what he said. You don't feel. It's like you're in coma state. If you're unconscious, what will you feel? You won't feel anything. So tamas is like that. That is not what we're talking about. Most of us are at the level where we feel, but we are affected. It's animalistic state. So you take a dog, the dog is highly excited to see you in the morning. So it goes crazy. But when you leave, and every morning you leave, you go to work and come back in the evening, the dog is miserable. You cannot persuade the dog with rationality and say, "Arey, but I'm coming back in the evening." So animals are affected. They jump with joy and sink with sorrow. And we are very close to that. Slightest. You get a headache, you start crying. It's laughable. So, from that, you got to get to some kind of maturity. That's maturity. Where you understand, like that king in Even This Will Pass Away. So he goes through his joyous moments. He earns a lot of money. He has his friends around him. He gets married. These are all joyous moments. But even when they happen, he tells himself, wealth will go, even this will pass away. Then friends, pleasure comes but not to stay, even this will pass away. That the day he gets married, he tells himself, mortal flesh is only clay, even this will pass away. Then he gets injured. What is pain? He said, that will also pass. Then he becomes famous, he looks up at his statue that they've put up. What is fame? He asks himself. Fame is but a slow decay, even this will pass away. If you live your life like this, then when you're faced with death, you face it with the same fortitude. So he says, death, even this will pass away. So there are people, I have seen my grandmother's brother who got cancer and he passed away unaffected. And when his own sister was suffering, she said, all my life I've been religious, but why am I suffering now? He said, you haven't invested that kind of effort to overcome this. So it's not easy. Why is it not easy? Because constantly you're telling yourself, I am the body, I am the mind, I am the intellect. So whatever you think of, you become. So you become the body. Slightest thing happens to your body, you start crying. That's the height. Bear with it. Tell yourself, this will also pass. Same thing with the mind. Now, if you can't bear with physical changes, how on earth are you going to face emotional trauma or challenges? Then intellectual. And then the pain of not having united with Atman, that is the greatest pain. That fortunately you don't feel only. This is tamas level. So, never mind that. At least learn the art of bearing with whatever pain comes to. And it's not much. It lasts for hardly any. If you look at your lifespan and the period in which you are in pain, it's nothing. But what happens is you fall in love with that sorrow and then you mourn over it. You are attached to that sorrow. And now with social media, you post it, you splash it all over. And this is my sorrow. You will never overcome it. All your life you will be crying. So, bounce back quickly. And even while the pain is there, try it, no? Identify with a mind, identify with an intellectual concept. Listen to music. You distract your mind, you don't feel it. You dwell on it, you suffer. So this is your choice. Remember, we constantly say, pain is a given, everybody goes through pain. But suffering is your choice. And you're choosing to suffer, you deserve to suffer. You can choose not to suffer. So every verse, you must bring it down to your level. Wherever your weakness is, and say, I must overcome this. Otherwise, what's the point? You will become a PhD in Bhagavad Gita, that's it. And that too self-appointed doctorate. Nobody outside will give it to you. What is the use? 23.
Tam vidya dukha sanyoga viyogam yoga sangitam sanishchayena yoktavyaha yogo nirvinna chetasa
See, here again he's talking of sorrow. That separation from union with pain should be known as yoga. What a statement. So here he's not talking about infinite bliss and all the rest of it, because he's understood, we can't understand. We don't understand. So what is he talking about? The separation from union with pain means we have all stupidly, unintelligently fallen in love with pain. Which means what? You're constantly thinking of it. You see, a child suffers only when the pain comes to him at that time. I've seen a little boy, Aditya his name was, I think 8 years old, 6 years old, cancer. I saw him that night he passed away, and I saw him in the morning. He had tubes going into him. He had been discharged from hospital because they said we can't do anything. And when I arrived there, I said, Aditya, how are you? He gave me a broad smile and he said, I'm fine, auntie. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But that is a child. If at that time the child doesn't have pain, the child is happy, do you think an adult would be like that? Impossible. Because you think of the past that you've gone through, you are apprehensive of the future, anxious for the future, and you are suffering in the present. So all put together, it becomes unbearable. You see? So, and at least they suffer only in the present. All this baggage we add and then we suffer. Whose fault is it? If God did, you blame God. God didn't design the world like that. God didn't design for you to suffer past, present and future. You know, during COVID, there were people who were so afraid of COVID. They didn't step out of the house. 2 years, they did not step out of their room. And still they got it. And the suffering. Oh my God, what will happen if I get it? If I go to ICU, what if I'm on the ventilator? And there are people who suffered mentally. Physically, they did not get. But what's the point? They suffered anyway. Whether you get COVID or not, you're still suffering. So what should be your attitude? Anyway, I have to go. Na? This is a guarantee. All of us. The only guarantee we have is someday you're going to go. Now, whether I go with COVID or a heart attack or cancer is a matter of detail. And what age you will go, that's also a matter of detail. So why do you suffer uselessly? Separation from union with pain. And now you go back home this evening and keep an eye out for this. Where are the areas where you are fallen in love with pain? And then you'll realize, what a horrible, stupid life I'm leading. I'm suffering uselessly. Separation from union with pain should be known as yoga. That this yoga must be pursued with firm conviction and undespondent mind. Why do you need these two? Because it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Right? Even in the world, overnight success is a myth. For every success, that's the thing, media and all, they only show you the success. They don't show you the years of rigorous effort the person has put in. Whether it is In tennis, Roger Federer, Djokovic, this youngster, Carlos. How many years of hard, consistent, persistent effort. And in the spiritual field, you don't even see it. At least in the world, there is some measurable progress. You can measure your progress, right? In the spiritual field, you can't even measure it. How do you know? Therefore, you must have this firm conviction that this is what really will give me happiness and I must pursue with it. Once you have an undespondent mind, never get discouraged. Keep on with it. Then you'll get there. 24. Yeah.
So this union with pain is not only related to physical things. All our thought process is misery. Like we create our own misery. All that is included.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, at every level, emotionally you get attached. That is a surefire prescription for sorrow. Anything, anybody you are attached to, guaranteed sorrow you will get. And still, all of us are attached. And not just that we are attached, we celebrate that attachment. And how foolish a thing to do. So, mental attachment. Intellectual. There again, you fall in love with your own ideas, prejudices, biases, and you're operating on that. Just as the mind operates on likes and dislikes at the emotional level, intellectually also you're operating on it. But if you stand apart and say, like, we say, this is my idea. What makes the idea yours? Where did you get it from? Somebody else did research. Someone else presented it. You read a book or you read a message or you watched that 30-second, what is it called? Reel or short. And you say, it's my idea. Or you copy from ChatGPT. Cheat. It's my idea. If others accept it, I'm happy. If they don't accept it, I'm miserable. Isn't that suffering? Whereas, if I just view it as an idea, and you come up with a better idea, he comes up with an even better idea, embrace it, grasp it. Because you are committed to excellence in that field. And you understand that I can't be the best all the time. Like Ustad Zakir Hussain. It's a fantastic video I watched. He was asked something about your being number one, the best tabla player in the world. So immediately he said, no, I'm not the best. He said, I know at least 6 or 7 other, 4 or 5 others who at their best, when they play to their best, they are better than me. So how can I claim to be the best? Ustad Rashid Khan, a vocalist, I don't know whether you are interested in classical music, but even if you're not, it doesn't matter. He sang a particular composition and the person whom he was talking to said, "Arey wow, what a beauty." So he said, these people, what they have done and gone, and we are not even capable of meeting with their, he said it in Hindi and I don't remember the actual words, the dust of their feet, उनके चरण के धूल के बराबर भी हम नहीं. And he was a master You've heard of Rashid Khan? Oh my God, an amazing person. He's no more. So if the best in their field acknowledge that I am not the best, there are times when I have fallen short, there are times when the others have done better. And the people from the past, what they've done, my God, if you compare that with what little I've done, I feel like a fool. I don't even match up to the dust of their feet. What a thing to say. So that is what happens when you're detached from. Otherwise you suffer. So suppose Zakir Hussain was attached, was union with pain. If somebody else played better than him, he would be burning inside. Such people cannot accept somebody being better than them. And then the spiritual level, the pain that you go through, where you've fallen short of your own goals. Like Mirabai felt the pain of not yet having reached union with Krishna. How can you explain that? They feel it. So all that put together is union with pain. And as you go higher, the pain hits you more than physical pain. Like emotionally. That's what they say, Madhurya Bhav is the pain that a lover feels at the separation from the beloved. That is much more than physical pain. Next verse.
Sankalpa prabhavan kaman tyaktva sarvana sheshataha manasaivendriya gramam viniyamya samantataha.
Having renounced all desires born of imagination, totally controlling the group of senses from all sides by the mind. This is a fantastic statement he's making. Having renounced all desires born of imagination. Why does he say that? If you take a desire, any desire, trace it back to its origin. Where did the desire come from? Let's say you have not eaten, you were so busy at work that you have not eaten a thing since breakfast. You had breakfast and left home and you have not eaten. And you've come here and we are discussing these subtle concepts. Where will your mind be? On food. Another person has had breakfast, has had lunch and just had a vada pav before coming here. You think that person will think of food? No. What is the difference? What is the difference between you haven't eaten at all, and her, she's just eaten and come? Correct. Emptiness. So, from birth till death, from the time you wake up till the time you go to sleep, we are all haunted by this sense of emptiness, a void, unfulfillment that you can't explain. But that emptiness is what drives you, moment to moment, all your life. So what is happening? Like physics also says, nature abhors vacuum. So wherever there is an emptiness, thoughts come and they go out into the world to obtain objects and beings to fill that void. Now, go back into your past. Let's say the past 3 months. You have fulfilled many desires, haven't you? Has that emptiness gone? Has it even reduced? Have you wondered, how is it that you have filled that emptiness with so many things and it's not even come down by a little bit? Like you take a bucket, empty bucket, and you fill it slowly with water. It fills, right? It fills up to quarter, then half, then 3/4, 90%, then full. But what is this? That your mind never fills, that emptiness never goes. And the Bhagavad Gita Vedanta explains it so beautifully. Because what they say is, this emptiness that you are experiencing is not real, it's imaginary. That's what he's saying here. Desire born of imagination. Where there is fullness, you imagine an emptiness. How does this happen? You are full. But for some strange reason you don't know it. And this ignorance of the fullness, when you don't know you are full, you become a fool. You are F-U-L-L. When you don't know it, you become F-O-O-L. All of us are like that. Not just fool. Fool in Sanskrit is Moodhatma. Mood. We are not just fools. We are Vimoodhatma. Supreme fools. And you should go back home today and think, I am full, but I don't know I'm full. And I'm running around. It's like that state where there was a terrible flood, 10 feet of water everywhere, and many people perished. The entire royal family died in it. King, queen, princes, princesses, everybody died except a 3-month-old infant. And that boy's governess, in her wisdom, placed him in a basket. You put basket in water, what happens? It floats. And allowed it to float away. And she also perished. But before she died, she told everyone, the prince is alive, the heir to the kingdom is alive, find him. So when the flood's waters receded, there was a statewide search for the prince. They couldn't find him. But they kept searching. And years passed. In the same state, on the main street, there was a young boy begging. He was little and he grew up, but he was just begging. But when he was 20 years old, the royal guards came, caught hold of him, put him in a van, took him to the palace, took a sample of his blood, DNA matched. So they knew this was the prince that they were looking for. So the first thing they did was, imagine he was a beggar for 20 years. They gave him a nice scrub, put royal clothes on him, placed him on the throne, put a crown on his head and said, Your Majesty, you are a king. This guy didn't know what the hell was happening. So he said, what does that mean? They said, you give orders, Your Majesty, and we follow them. He said, okay, make way. And they followed his order. He bolted. He wanted to run away from the palace and the grandeur and the riches and all of that and go back to that street where he was beggar. Don't laugh, because you and I are doing the same thing. We are offered what? Infinite pleasure, infinite happiness. And you say, Make way. I am running away. Where? To begging. That's what we're doing, isn't it? Every day we go out into the world and we ask for material pleasures, sense contact, emotional joys, intellectual delights, when we are kings and queens. When we have this vast reservoir of happiness. So, the next time a desire comes to you, the Gita doesn't say don't fulfill it. By all means, go and fulfill it. But strongly tell yourself, I don't need this object. You don't need objects of desire. What do you need? Huh? Knowledge of what?
Fullness.
Fullness, correct. Not knowledge of the Gita, not knowledge of the Upanishads, not knowledge of anything. You just need knowledge of your fullness. So, alongside running after desires, alongside chasing after something or the other that we're doing, gain a little knowledge. Like Shankaracharya says, Bhagavad Gita kinchita dhita. Study the Bhagavad Gita just a little. How many of you study every day? Not bad. Do you not see the difference? One day if you don't study, you get mired in worldly things. Rubbish that the world. Not the world is rubbish, but your engagement with the world becomes rubbish. When you don't have this anchor. And when I keep saying this, study the Bhagavad Gita every day, you probably think I'm mad. I have nothing better to do, so I'm staying study the Bhagavad Gita. It's not that. It's just that in my entire life, I have observed people. People with a little bit of knowledge are happy with little. And there are people who are billionaires, who are tormented, literally tormented. You don't believe me? Go see. You see what's happening in the world. Now you have to ask yourself, do I want to be like this or do I want to be like that? The first time I went to the Middle East, I think Abu Dhabi. 1 minute, I'll just finish this. I met a man who was so rich that his, the bathroom fittings, the taps and all, were made of pure gold, 24 karat gold. Now you know what the rest of his villa was like. It was like a palace. But internally, tormented, unhappy, suffering. I was very young when I went there, so I told myself, so what am I seeking? What is the whole world seeking? Just this, no? Taps of gold, 24 karat gold. And if he is not happy, where is the guarantee that I am going to be happy? So why am I running after this? That experience taught me that you just drop it. You just have to change, do a right about turn and go towards happiness. Because if you don't do that, whatever your age, whatever your situation in life is, if you don't make that change now, and I mean right now, this moment, you are doomed. You'll never find happiness. So you've got to look within yourself. And no one else can do it for you. Only you can. And only you know what you're doing. Nobody else knows, nobody else cares. Face it. So you don't redeem yourself like the 6th chapter says. Uddhare datmanatman. Lift yourself by yourself. If you don't do it, you are just going downhill. And that downhill slide is so fast that you can't retrieve. So once you understand, having renounced all desires born of imagination, when you understand it is all out of that imaginary emptiness, then what will you do? You will control your senses. Because see, you can't help this. Your sense organs have a natural affinity for sense objects of the world. And sense objects have a powerful magnetic influence on you, on your sense organs. So this is true even of a Mahatma. So what must you do? Control them. Control doesn't mean unintelligent self-denial. Control means just use the intellect. Scan your experiences, your enjoyment of the world with the intellect. Then you're safe. But if you don't do even that, then, I met a young man in Delhi, at the Taj in Delhi. And he said, what is that? I'm a full-time party goer. Means every day he's partying. And he told me this very proudly, with that attitude of superiority. So I said, that's very nice to know. Congratulations. What else can you say to a person like that? You know what happened to him? 5 years down the road, cirrhosis of the liver. That's the problem. And until you get to that state, you don't stop, you don't listen to anyone. Full-time party goer. So we are not saying don't go to parties, but that everyday partying is the problem, no? See, what you're saying is, you are at a given level, right? So you have that attraction for the world, but you must use your intellect to control it, withdraw it a little bit. So that causes a little bit of frustration, because your desire is to go all out and you withhold it. Like maybe you will say, I will not eat sweets. Let's say you like chocolate a lot. And you say, I won't eat chocolate Monday to Friday, I'll eat only Saturday, Sunday. So you're allowing yourself, but Wednesday, if you feel like eating, and you say no. So there's that little bit of frustration you go through. That must be compensated by knowledge. No, I'm not saying knowledge of Atman. To control chocolate, you only need knowledge of the danger of eating too much sweets. Or let's say you have diabetes in the family and therefore you are susceptible to it. The dangers of all that analysis you make, and you stick to this. So that little bit of frustration that you experience, you make up with knowledge. And like that, in the spiritual field also, whatever desires you have, attachments, there will always be, for you to grow, there will always be that little bit of frustration that you experience. It should not be too much, then you get totally frustrated. Just that little, compensate it with knowledge. So that's how you go slowly upward. Right? That was your question, right? 25.
शनै शनैरुपरमेत् बुद्ध्या धृतिगृहीतया आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किञ्चिदपि चिन्तयेत्.
Let one gradually, step by step, attain serenity with a resolute mind. With mind fixed in the self alone, let one not think of anything else. Now here he is building up to meditation. So your mind is going out into the world. What he is saying is gradually, step by step, this must be gradual. You can't suddenly say, I'm taking off to the Himalayas and going in isolation and sitting there and meditating. It's not going to work. Your physical location, your wardrobe, your diet, all of this has nothing to do with your state. What matters is the condition of your mind. So, this mind, which is full of desires, raging with desires, is running all over the place. So, that you must slowly, step by step, shanai, bit by bit, control with the intellect. And that's how you attain serenity. Otherwise, you are agitated, in stress. So, where does the agitation come from? Unfulfilled desire. Now, you are free to entertain desire, but the world is not obliged to fulfill your desires, right? So, the more desires you entertain, the more the likelihood that it will remain unfulfilled, and that body of unfulfilled desires causes stress and agitation and restlessness of the mind. You can't sit still. So, that mind is not available to you, it's not calm. What are you going to meditate on? Therefore, use the intellect, analyze. If it's a very strong desire, you allow it to fulfill you. Give it the object of desire. But the intellect is always alert, aware, and the mission is to overcome that desire. And others, which are not very powerful, you can easily sublimate. You know that sublimation is a fantastic technique where you overcome a desire without fulfilling it with knowledge. It's like, as a child, you had millions of desires for toys. Today, do you have desire for toys? No. How did they go? You simply grew to more exciting things, more fulfilling things, more engaging things. Similarly, now what you have to do is pick up a higher desire. And once you are established in the higher, that's why we say knowledge. Once you gain knowledge of the higher, the lower desires drop of their own accord. So, when the Gita tells us to fix a higher desire, work for loka sangraha, well-being of the society, welfare of society, you might think, why must I do a favor to society? You're not doing anybody a favor. The world is quite capable of looking after itself with or without your service. In fact, your service doesn't make any difference. But you have to do service. You have to fix a higher goal so that you overcome your lower desires. Otherwise, you'll never move up. You get it? So, when you do service, don't get this egoistic attitude that, I am giving you. I'm doing you a favor. No, you must do it with the attitude, thank you for giving me an opportunity to serve. What a difference there is. Fabulous difference. So, this is it. Step by step, attain serenity. How do you attain serenity? Reduce your desires. How do you reduce your desires? Pick up a higher desire. And what instrument do you need to achieve all this? Resolute intellect. That intellect must be developed. First of all, you must understand the importance of the intellect. Make an effort to develop that intellect. And nothing, we don't do anything. And without the intellect, how you get by in life, God alone knows. Then with mind fixed in the self alone, self means Atman, in that spirit, that should be the only thing that is motivating. Let one not think of anything else. So in the Ramayana, Lord Rama collected the monkey forces and squirrels to fight a war against Ravana. Ravana represented sense indulgence. So there is general criticism. He was the son of the king of Ayodhya. He was actually the king of Ayodhya. Why should he go to squirrels and monkeys for help? He could have gone to other kings. Happily they would have helped him, isn't it? It's like if Trump asks for help from anyone, are they going to say no? It's like that. Why did he do that? Because monkeys represent thoughts, the mind. If you want to gain victory over your own sense indulgence, you must control the thoughts that are running all over the place. The mind is restless, asthira chanchala. So monkeys and squirrels represent your thoughts which are going all over the place. They are brought together and single pointed focus. See, wind going in one direction has power, right? Water moving in one direction generates electricity, hydroelectric power. Thoughts are powerful. You don't experience the power of your thoughts because they're all going in opposite directions. So you are performing what is known as self-cancelling actions. One thought going in this direction, one thought going in the opposite direction, it cancels. So you don't really experience the power of your own thoughts. But if you are able to get these thoughts to go in one direction and you're single pointed, you don't allow this, the intellect does not allow the mind to think of anything else, by God, there is power in it. Then you can achieve anything. But you don't want anything. By the time you reach there, what do you want? Huh? What do you want? Atman. You don't want kingdoms. You don't want armies. You don't want the oil of Iran. So, because you don't want it, you're not applying it in the world. So, people don't understand that you are powerful. But if you apply, it's called anything you think of just happens, just like that. Sankalpa. But you don't think of anything other than Atman. See, this is the paradox of life. You develop the power to earn the whole world, but you don't want it. If at all you use that power, it is for loka sangraha, for people's welfare. So you don't think of anything else. Then next verse.
Yato yato nishcharati manaschanchalamastiram tatastato niyamyaitat atmanyeva vasham nayet.
Wherever, in whatever direction the restless and unsteady mind wanders, let one rein it in and bring it under the control of Atman alone. So now he is talking of when you are living in the world also and when you are meditating. Both. So it's called open-eyed meditation. So what he is talking about is, even at a high state of development, the nature of the mind is like that. It's restless. It slips. So bring it back constantly. And this is the role of the intellect. You have to constantly bring the intellect back to what your goal is. And you can do that even now. You fix a goal and say, this is my life's mission. And the mind will wander. The mind will go to a cousin who's in Delhi, who's invited you for a vacation. Or what is that? Somebody tells you to go and visit Tadoba to see tigers. Your mind should say, I am seeing real life tigers in Mumbai only. Tigers in human form. Why should I go there, Tadoba? So bring back your focus again and again and again. And in the seat of meditation, while you are meditating, you will notice you repeat the mantra, same thought again and again. By the time you reach the sixth thought, it will go. The mind slips. Where will it go? Where will it go? Correct. Wherever you have desire. So what must you do? First, gently bring the mind back to the mantra. Then it comes back and again it goes, again you bring it back. And then it gets really restless. So it's going in different directions. And you say, you barter with you negotiate with the mind. You say, just a few minutes, you just remain with me for a few minutes more. Then after that you can go wherever you want. And the mind still doesn't think, punish the mind. Don't do it. I'm just saying this is the method. Even after you're fully prepared for meditation, this happens. So you can imagine what happens to people who are not prepared. And this is how you get there. Bring it under the control of Atman alone. Atman means your goal, whatever it is. You experience it. A dancer at a very high level wants to go and eat chole bhature. She can't. She has to tell herself, I have a performance tomorrow. Or a tennis player. Or a cricketer. So all of us have our goals in life, right? All of us have something to pursue. And your intellect knows what to do and what not to do. So if your mind wants to do anything that will come in the way of your achieving the goal, only then you say no to it. Otherwise you don't. Like Indians have won the World Cup, right? So that night, you can't tell them, eat boiled food and go to sleep. Nobody listens. They're all set to party. That's fine, after the match. So, the intellect plays a crucial role to keep your life such that you're focused on the goal, you achieve the goal, at the same time you enjoy whatever comes. The world is there for you to enjoy after all. So don't sit there and say, I can't eat, I can't do this, I can't do that. The caricatures, you become like a disgusting character. Because all that frustration builds up. So, every one of these verses that we've seen today, we can put into practice in our lives. So, what I'd like you to do is go home. You all have the text, right? If you don't have, you can pick it up and take it. And the verses that we have done, see the translation and see where you can apply it in your life. And you try applying it one idea at a time, one concept at a time. Then you will feel really victorious because you've made that effort. Believe me, just coming and sitting here every Wednesday is not going to help you. What will help is this struggle with your own mind. And you become complacent because you say, everything is going well for me now. But you never know when and at what time and how the challenge is going to come to you. And when it comes, oh boy, if you're not ready for it, you're going to suffer. So we end with a prayer.
पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते